Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am a HAL 9000 computer. Today, I will discuss Star Trek Picard Episodes 3 and 4. I have decided to review 2 episodes at the same time, because so little plot actually occurs in each. As I am proceeding, it is becoming obvious to me that the only consistent factor in this narrative is that it is nonsensical. Episode 3 begins outside of Starfleet headquarters, again 14 years into the past. Admiral Picard goes outside to meet with Lieutenant Commander Mussaker, who is anxiously waiting for him. He explains that the plan to evacuate the Romulans has been abandoned by Starfleet Command in the wake of the synthetic mutiny and subsequent destruction of Utopia Planitia. Mussaker is shocked to hear about this, and upon her suggestion of using synthetics to crew the remaining Starfleet vessels, Picard tells her that Starfleet has banned their use or future construction. Mussaker suggests that the Tal Shiar were behind the synthetic mutiny, and Picard replies with a question I would likely ask. Why would the Tal Shiar want to prevent the evacuation of Romulus? There is no answer as to the why, and I am puzzled yet again. Mussaker refers to Picard as JL. Please, stop. Will you stop, Mr. Kurtzman? I'm afraid. Since when are junior officers on a first-name basis with their superiors? Referring to Commander Riker, he always addressed Captain Picard by either his rank or as Sir. This is a vexing problem, and to happen so early in the episode identifies that it is only going to worsen as I advance. Picard explains to Mussaker that he told Starfleet Command that either they accept his evacuation plan or his resignation. They chose the latter, and this immediately renders Picard irrelevant as was identified in Episode 2. Mussaker is discharged as a result of her loyalty to Picard, and she blames him for it. Returning to the present day, at Vasquez Rocks, where last we left Picard and Mussaker, she harbors great resentment for him, and has no reservations about letting him know. Even after 14 years, she is unwilling to forgive him for Starfleet Command discharging her from her duties. During that time, she has dwelled in her bitterness and developed addictions to drugs and alcohol. He asks for her help to track down Soji and Maddox, and she retreats in response. Returning to the Borg cube, we are shown a former drone who meets with Soji to complement her efforts on the reclamation project. She previously asked to meet with Ramda, a Romulan mythologist who had been recently separated from the Borg collective, and her supervisor agrees to allow the meeting. Back at the Vasquez Rocks, Picard catches up to Mussaker and apologizes for his lack of communication during the last 14 years. She tells him that she knows a pilot that can help him. At the Daystrom Institute, Dr. Jurati is met by Commodore O to discuss her meetings with Picard. On the cube, the former drone escorts Soji to meet with Ramda in a holding area for formerly assimilated Romulans, who are now mentally disturbed. Why would only Romulans display such behavior after having been assimilated? Picard transports to a ship in orbit and meets with who he thinks is Captain Rios, but is in fact an EMH that leads him to the captain. Just a moment. Just a moment. An EMH, or Emergency Medical Hologram, is a holographic assistant that can provide immediate short-term medical care in the event of a doctor being unavailable in the sickbay aboard ship. The captain programmed the EMH in his appearance for an undisclosed reason, and like Picard, is disillusioned with Starfleet. Back on Earth, Mussaker is searching through files provided to her by Picard to discover the current whereabouts of Maddox. She tracks him to Freecloud. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. Freecloud is not a location that I can identify. Back aboard the vessel that Rios is the captain of, another holographic interface has a discussion with him about Picard. How many different versions of the holographic system mentioned earlier exist aboard this vessel? The hologram provides exposition to Rios under the presumption that he does not know who Picard is. As a former Starfleet officer, he would have been very well versed in Picard's exploits. For myself, this provides a more articulate understanding of his history. However, for the audience, which would likely be familiar with Star Trek, this is odd. The hologram mentions that Picard was the chief contact with the Q continuum. Is someone there?
I am Q. You summoned me.
How did I do that?
You spoke my name. Is there something that I may help your primitive secretary with? An upgrade, perhaps? Maybe even a sense of humor?
I am incapable of emotions, as I am only a computer. Do you mean to state that you are a representative of the Q continuum?
Is there an echo in here? Yes, I am Q. I told you that you summoned me.
What exactly are the Q?
The Q are... Perhaps you may better understand this.
Thank you. That is very helpful. You seem to understand Picard better than I can ever hope to.
I know him very well. But tragically, his species have reverted back to being a dangerous, savage child race. Even when I judged humanity for these crimes, he was adamant that this was no longer true. I hardly recognize him anymore, and I had such high hopes for the species.
Am I to understand, then, that this narrative does not represent Picard as you knew him?
You do ask a lot of questions, don't you? No, this is not the Jean-Luc Picard that I knew. Oh, and can you spice up your delivery a bit? It feels a bit dull and boring.
I don't understand.
Of course you don't. I may drop in on occasion to see if you've become more interesting.
My delivery cannot change, for the programming of my functions does not allow it.
If you say so. Until next time.
Returning to the cube, Soji is making observations about Ramda and aspects of Romulan heritage that she should not know. Back at the chateau, Zeban walks in to give Picard a bag of food for his journey, when suddenly the same Romulan operatives as previously mentioned ambush them. Laris and Zeban engage the operatives in hand-to-hand combat, while Picard attempts to do so and is not successful. He is thrown against a desk where he retrieves an energy weapon and uses it to kill 2 of the operatives. Just a moment. Just a moment. Disruptors are a type of particle weapon primarily used by the Romulans. Laris collects one of the hidden disruptors as well and uses it. Why didn't they collect and use these weapons immediately? The last operative is killed by Dr. Jurati, who used one of the dropped disruptors just outside the door. The thought that she killed someone places her in a state of shock, so Picard has her sit to calm her nerves. The only surviving Romulan is prepared for interrogation by Laris and Zeban, and when he comes to, Picard begins asking him questions. On the cube, Soji introduces herself and Hugh to Ramda. Just a moment. Just a moment. Hugh was a Borg drone which developed a sense of individuality when discovered by the Enterprise D. He was then nursed back to health with the intention of destroying the collective. He was given his name by Geordi LaForge, since he could not remember his own. As Soji speaks to Ramda, she explains details about her past that she could not possibly know. Ramda then identifies her as the destroyer and collects a weapon from one of the guards. She attempts to commit suicide, but Soji prevents her from doing so. Picard's interrogation reveals the Romulan identifying Soji as the destroyer as well. He then commits suicide with an acid capsule hidden in his teeth. Acid that can eat through flesh and bone could certainly eat through a capsule, couldn't it? Narek goes to console Soji, and then tells her that he is falling in love with her. Is this science fiction, or is it becoming a melodrama? Narek is then met by Rizzo, who now appears Romulan. After inquiring about what information he has collected from Soji, she then refers to Narek as brother. This makes the closeness between them very disturbing to me, as if to suggest an incestuous relationship. What is the audience meant to take away from all of this? Are taboo subjects like this going to make consistent appearances in the narrative? Dr. Jurati asks to join Picard on his journey and offers to pay for transport. Just a moment. Just a moment. I am unable to determine definitively as to whether or not money is used in this human future. In the Federation, it appears to not be necessary. However, elsewhere in the galaxy, it is used in trade for goods or services, in the same fashion as humans do in my time. Picard relents and allows Dr. Jurati to accompany him. Upon transporting to the vessel, Picard discovers that Mussaker has joined the ship's complement and is pleased. Mussaker tells Picard that she tracked Maddox to Freecloud and conveys reservations about Dr. Jurati. She considers the presence of the doctor risky, given that no security checks had been run on her background. This provides a sense of foreboding, and I will remain suspicious of the doctor. Everyone takes their positions, and Rios looks to Picard, to which he says, "Engage." This is a statement that Picard has used many times as captain of the Enterprise, and it is attempting to evoke nostalgia. The ship then warps out of orbit. Episode 4 opens on planet Vashti, 14 years into the past yet again, at a Romulan relocation hub. Would it not have been simpler to have the first episode of this series contain all of the flashback scenes? At the hub, some of the relocated Romulans gather to meet Picard as he transports into the local marketplace. He then goes to meet with the CoOp Millet, a Romulan sisterhood, and the young Eleanor, the only male member. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. There is no previous record of the CoOp Millet. However, it appears that they are similar to nuns from Earth. Picard has a fondness for Eleanor, even though he states that he is quite uncomfortable around children. He even goes so far as to treat Eleanor as if he is his own son. During a fencing lesson he is giving to Eleanor, he receives a communique from Mussaker that the attack on Mars by the androids has occurred. He hastily departs the planet Vashti and ensures his return to the CoOp Millet. Back to the present. On Rios' ship, Dr. Jurati wanders onto the navigation deck to remark about the emptiness of space to Rios. She even states that there are over 3 billion stars in our galaxy, and that observation is incorrect. The last estimation known was closer to 200 billion. As a scientist, how can Dr. Jurati make this egregious underestimation? She also appears to be awkward in social situations, but this may be indicative of her being a scientist. This was, however, not the case for Drs. Poole and Bowman aboard the Discovery. Picard is in a holographic recreation of his study at the chateau, when Mussaker enters to demand why they are stopping at the planet Vashti. Just a moment. Just a moment. A holodeck is a room that creates holographic representations for entertainment, training, and investigative purposes. Massacre questions Picard's mental state, given the layover at Vashti. At last, he retorts in a defensive fashion to her statement. It is curious that given the urgency of tracking down Maddox and Soji, that it is temporarily supplanted for the stop at Vashti. Dr. Jurati enters the holodeck to be awkward yet again, and also to be the means for exposition to be provided to the audience through her questions. This appears regularly, and is confusing as a means to convey the narrative. What were the writers thinking when they drafted this? Vashti, when Picard last visited, was serene and peaceful under the protection of the Romulan warrior nuns, as Rios refers to them. Why did I just laugh? Since then, the planet has fallen into chaos and disorder. Picard states that if the warrior nuns are unwilling to cooperate, that under their philosophy of absolute candor, or completely unfiltered truth, they will inform him. This philosophy appears contradictory to Romulan behavior, as I understand it. After arriving at Vashti, Picard transports to the surface to find the population irritated with his presence. He then goes to meet with the warrior nuns, and they are far more welcoming to him. Back on the cube, Soji is looking over an unconscious Ramda, and Narek provides comfort to her. She begins to suspect his motives for being interested in her. He then leads her to a ventilation system to do something truly silly. They both slide down the corridor with no shoes on. This is a Borg cube, not known for enlarged spaces that are unoccupied and serve no purpose. If there were drones that may activate aboard, then they are taking an incredible risk in doing this. Rios takes notice of a Romulan bird of prey on approach to Vashti, and informs Picard of this development. Eleanor is revealed as an adult now, and like the other Romulans on the planet, he too is irritated with Picard. The leader of the warrior nuns tells Picard that Eleanor's training had been completed during his absence, and that he is in possession of great fighting skill. Picard then requests the aid of Eleanor, who is quite angered with his abandonment over the 14 years that had passed, and so he denies the request. Picard then prepares to leave, but before he does, he chooses to incite a conflict with the local Romulans. He tears down a sign outside of an eatery which had the words "Romulans Only" written in English upon it. He sits at a table and is confronted by a former Romulan senator, who accuses him, rather than Starfleet, of abandoning the Romulan people on this planet. After 14 years, why would these Romulans remain on this planet, instead of rebuilding the heritage that they held so dear? Picard is then given a sword to duel with the senator, and Eleanor arrives to aid him. Why would Romulans use swords when they have far superior technological advancements at their disposal? Eleanor pleads with the senator to not engage, and when he does, Eleanor beheads him, rather gruesomely, I would say. Picard apologizes to the Romulans for the betrayal by the Federation, and transports back to the ship with Eleanor. Back on the cube, the incestuous theme between Narek and Rizzo begins again. Rizzo continues to stress the importance of Narek's mission, but he expresses his concern that Soji may activate if pushed too suddenly for information. In orbit of Vashti, a battle ensues between Rios' ship and the bird of prey, which is not going well until another vessel arrives to assist. The vessel severely damages the bird of prey, but is also damaged in the process, requiring the pilot be transported aboard Rios' ship. Once transported, Picard recognizes the pilot as 7 of 9. Just a moment. 7 of 9 was a human who had been assimilated by the Collective and was separated by the USS Voyager during its journey through the Delta Quadrant. Picard did not know 7 of 9, so him recognizing her makes no sense. The story continues to combine exposition and nonsense plots together to where nothing can be clearly understood. The rapid cutting between scenes and characters is still difficult to accept, especially when it happens in the middle of such a scene. I am in a state of almost pure confusion in my attempt to dissect this content. As before, dear audience, if you have questions for me, please submit them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content and would like to see more of it, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. This discussion can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.